This is Luke Zapadka
Yep.
from Woodland Gardens, second generation greenhouse, actually third now.
Yep.
And he's going to tell us a little bit about how they go about raising poinsettias that we can buy right now.
You have to remember with a poinsettia that it is a semi-tropical plant and you want to treat it as such. So the most important thing is when you get it home, we try to get leaves to protect it from the weather. So you want to do the same thing. Don't leave it in your car overnight. Try to not keep it in temperatures that are going to get much below 45, 50 degrees. Once you get it inside, usually what we do is we have it wrapped in foil. You want to scrape a hole in the bottom of the foil when you put it on the saucer so any water will drain through the foil into the saucer. And you want to discard any water after a short period of time out of the saucer so the plant doesn't sit in direct water, because will start rotting the root system. And poinsettias are unusually susceptible for that.
How do you determine and when do you determine how many you're going to raise?
Good record keeping is generally the easiest way to determine what you're going to raise year to year. You keep records of what you plant, take inventory after Christmas, you determine what was more popular, less popular. Reds are always at least 2/3 of the crop is red. And then, the colors, depending on, I guess, the fashion of the time as far as what people are into. And, advertisements have a lot to do with it. People see things in some of the plant magazines.
Okay.
So that kind of determines what might be popular that year. But we generally just keep good records to help us understand how many we should be raising year to year.
You get your plantings in what time of year? So
The first planting comes in the second week of July. So right after we're done spacing the mums, we have to fill all the pots for poinsettias. We do larger pots in the first planting. That would be the 12-inch, 10-inch, 9-inch, 8-inch.
and then when's your second
The
plant?
second planting is in the end of July, and those are primarily all 6-inch.
And then the last
The
planting?
last planting would be mid-August, which would be for the smaller sizes, the 4.5-inch.
This is your first planting?
Yeah, this is 12-inch, 5 plants in the pot. This one would be one of the first, the 12-inch are in the first planting, so these were planted in the second week of July. So that's why we plant them early, just to try to get them to size up. Because, a lot of the things after the fall, or equinox, that's when they get kind of triggered into starting to flower. So you want to have some decent size on the plant before days start getting short, because that's the trigger for them to start turning over to color. So they go from basically concentrating on growing to concentrating on flowering. So that's why you want to get the size. This would be one of the later plantings. We actually will take cuttings off of some of the first planting, the ones we plant in the second week of July, and we'll root those cuttings and we'll put them in these pixie. So this is the smallest size we grow.
So how do you fertilize? They need a lot of light, correct? Do they
Yeah.
kind of lighting and fertilizing?
Full sun. There is shade on the greenhouse just because it gets so hot in the summer, so we do shade it. The shade comes off in the fall. We fertilize through the water. It's all liquid fed, about 3 times a week. When they're really growing, this time of year, we cut it back. Right now we're pretty much just water. Or after October, you get into November, we don't really fertilize much. This crop here, this is the second planting, started about the 3rd, 4th week of July. And you can kind of target the size by different varieties. There's some varieties that are more vigorous, that are going to size up quicker. We put those into the bigger pots, and some of the smaller growing varieties that'll stay a little tighter, a little more squat. Those are the ones we generally try to use in the 6.5-inch pots, the 4.5-inch pots.